Hi there, BookTube. It's Ros. Now, you know that when I read a good new novel in particular that's relatively recently published, I'll try if I can to do a quick review and let you know if I liked it and whether you might like it. And this time, the one I'm going to talk about is this, The Dream Hotel by Laila Lalami, which was published this year, 2025. I was keen to read this for two reasons. One is that Laila Lalami writes her fiction in her third language, and I think I found that quite sort of intriguing, that someone could and would do that. So she was born in Morocco and grew up there and did her first degree there. That was obviously using French and Arabic, and both Moroccan Arabic and Standard Arabic. Then she came to the UK to do a master's in English, in linguistics, in fact, and then wound up doing a PhD in the States, and she now lives permanently in the United States. So, yeah, I suppose that was one thing that interested me in her writing. The other reason I particularly wanted to read this book of hers was because it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. Now, that in itself is a recommendation, but when the shortlist was announced, there are a couple of books on the long list that readers that I sort of know and think well of. The two books on the long list that the most people said, "Oh, I'm really sad that didn't make it to the shortlist," were Nesting by Roisin O'Donnell, that I read last month, and this one. So that piqued my curiosity even further. So were they right? Should it have made the shortlist? Is it that good? Well, I'm inclined to think yes, actually. Of the things that I've read on both the long list and the shortlist, this is definitely one that I would have put forward for the shortlist for myself. Obviously, I didn't get to be one of the judges, so, not my choice. But why? Because this is an intelligent, thoughtful, polished novel that is also a real page turner. And I think that's a real, what you hope for in the Women's Prize in particular, that combination. And what makes me say that? Well, let's say a bit more about it. It's speculative fiction, I guess. It's a novel that's set in the near future. So in a world that is very recognisably our world, but a few years hence, maybe a decade or so hence. It's unspecific about when. You could say that this is an example of high concept fiction, as was The Ministry of Time, which was another of the books on the long list. A book where there's a central idea or device that the story kind of turns on that is crucial to the story. And in this, what is it? What is it in this case? What it is that by this point in America, the point of when the book is set, they have a kind of preventive crime prevention kind of process that involves creating a risk score for everybody, and if you tip above a certain score, you're seen as potentially at risk of committing a serious crime, and you may be taken into kind of preventive detention or to be further assessed and your case reviewed. And all sorts of things can kind of tip you over, could add to that risk score, shall we say. So our protagonist, who is a Moroccan American, like Laila Lalami, Sarah, she's a young mother. She's got an interesting career. She's never been in trouble with the police. She goes on a conference and comes back and arrives at Los Angeles airport, and kind of something happens at immigration, and she is detained, and she is told that her risk score has tipped her over into the group that needs further investigation. And she eventually finds out that the reason that she's been selected for this is because of a dream that she has had in which she dreams of hurting her husband. So she's seen as being a potentially a violent offender because of that. Now, how could they know what was in her dreams? Because she had signed up for a device, a program, like a thing, which was to help her insomnia, and it did. The Dream Saver technology, it does wonders for helping people sleep and sorting out their insomnia. But in signing up for it, in the small print, it gives the company that runs it the permission to have access to your dreams and to use them for whatever purposes they see fit. And it's become one of the things that can contribute to your profile. The algorithm can pull you out and identify you. So that's the setup. And the book is really the story of her time in this detention. Well, I say detention centre. It's called a retention centre because, you haven't yet been convicted of anything. You're still being reviewed, investigated, but you kind of get stuck in this system and, things, a sort of huge sort of bureaucracy and a kind of punitive sort of regime where non-cooperation or things that are seen as infractions can cause your time to be extended, and and this is where Sarah finds herself. Why was the book so successful though? I mean, you can see that's an interesting setup, can't you? I suppose because it's almost all too real as a scenario. I guess Lalami's message, the big idea behind the book is that we are currently kind of sleepwalking into a kind of acceptance that we will share things that we buy or sign up to, apps, devices. We're signing away, I suppose, elements of privacy, and we agree to companies and the government sort of having huge amounts of all kinds of data, from what we buy, what we look up online, where we go, and it's only a small step ahead to this. And equally, we certainly in this country we've had preventive detention at times in the past. So it's all plausible, I suppose, that this could happen. And Lalami is saying, these things that we sign up for, they may be really useful to us. They can add a lot of convenience to our life, or help us communicate better. They may help our health and well-being, like the Dream Saver, genuinely sorts out people's insomnia. But we are not perhaps considering that these things could be used to sort of monitor and control us. Hypothetically, that this could happen, and should we be worrying about that? Now, that sounds like the book could be a bit sort of heavy-handed about all this, a bit sort of paranoid or clunky and thunking home a message. Absolutely not. It's very sort of nuanced, much more subtle, I suppose, than it sounds from that setup. It's really, although the setup is key, what makes the book work is the quality of the writing, the quality, the characterization is really strong. I really engaged with Sarah. I believed that she could have got into this position. I believed in her relationships with her husband, her children, the other women in this retention centre. That it was all, grounded in a feeling of psychological and emotional reality and practical reality. Like the retention centre is like it's a disused elementary school. It felt, I could picture it. I could imagine being in it. The description was very sort of concrete. It's not sort of fantastic. It's a very concrete sort of book. And and the plot is great. You know, I read this in about less than 24 hours. I devoured it, shall we say, because it had that almost thriller-like quality of. I was so concerned about her, and I so wanted to know, you know, what was going to happen, what was going to happen next, how her situation was going to work out or not work out, how was it going to be. So this is a very positive recommendation from me of if you're at all up for speculative fiction, but at the sort of literary novel sort of end of that, this could be a book for you. So, and if you've read it too, tell me what you think below.